IT challenge you maybe heard about. Hopefully, he has not affected any of our members. I hope that everybody been accessing the papers as we usually do via PDF, which is great. I would like to say as well, welcome to Alison Evison, the chair of NHS Grampian Board, who is here to observe. So welcome, Alison. We've got Forbes Dunlop from Sport Scotland was invited to attend. Is not okay. And we had a new member as well, Anthony Standing, but I don't think he can make it as well.
We've had apologies from, but Gogo will be able to go through the apologies we've received. Please, Gogo.
Very good. We're going to leave it to Gogo to tell us all about the apologies. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. We've got 4 apologies from Andrew Wright, Anthony Standings, Richard McCullen, Duncan Coburn, Graham Mackey, and we've got Jason Carrigan here subbing for Graham Mackey as well. And Councillor Radley has put in her apologies as well, Chair. So, Chair, I will go on to the roll call. Good afternoon and welcome to the board meeting of the Community Planning Aberdeen. This is a hybrid meeting and we've got some people joining us remotely via Microsoft Teams. Members of the board joining remotely should keep their camera on at all times, but switch their microphone off until they wish to speak. All other remote participants should have their cameras and microphones switched off during the meeting unless they are speaking. All remote participants will be asked to speak at the appropriate time. So I'll take the roll call. Chair?
Present.
Susan Webb?
Present.
Councillor Gregg?
Present.
Councillor Kate? Blake, sorry.
Present.
Councillor Cook?
Here.
Angela Scott? Here. Sarah Chu?
Here.
Professor Edwards?
Present.
Matt Lockley?
Yep, present.
Adam Coatswell? And Susan Elston?
Here.
Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So we go straight into declaration of interest. Anybody has got any declaration of interest? Nobody online? Nobody in the room? So we shall go to the next item, which will be minutes forward planner and national update. We got on 1.1 the Community Planning Aberdeen Board minute of the 29th of April 2024 for approval, page 3 to 8. Any comment to be made? Are we happy to approve? Yes, thank you. 1.2 CPA Management Group minutes of the 5th of June and 28th of August 2024. It's for information. 9 to 34. Any question on this? Nope. Thank you. The Community Planning Aberdeen Board forward planner on page 35. Have we got any question on this? Oh, sorry. I missed the 1.4. No, I didn't. No, we are doing 1.3 is a forward planners. So any question on the forward planner? Yes, Angela.
Thank you, Councillor Allard. Just to confirm to the colleagues that the submission on behalf of Community Planning Partnership on Marmot was submitted on the 23rd of September. It's not been published because obviously there's an assessment process underway. We will report on the outcome. We'll keep our fingers crossed that Aberdeen is successful as part of that, and then bring a report back into the board and the management group. But clearly trying to ensure that we align that all to our kind of current agenda. So I'm happy to come back with further updates on that, Councillor Allard, in due course.
Thanks, Mr. Chief Executive. Yeah, absolutely. And it would be good maybe to see the submission, whatever, and hopefully we will be, but it would be good to see the content of the submission just for us and our partners to understand a little better, especially if we're successful and we're going to be successful.
Happy to circulate that. I think we just didn't want to give anybody a competitive advantage by stealing from our submission. So so while that competitive process is underway, happy to share that, but just ask colleagues to keep that amongst themselves. But certainly we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm sure that people will keep that as a confidential, and it'll be after the process, of course. Any other question on the forward planner? No? Okay, happy to approve. 1.4, we've got a Scottish Government national update. Maybe Michelle wants to introduce us.
Thank you, Councillor Allard. We received this, I think, just this week or the end of last week. I can't remember. But Richard McCallum is not able to make the meeting today, but hopefully members have had a chance to look at the update. Within it, he's provided an update on the programme for government, the programme for reform, Fairer Futures Partnership, community planning and public service reform, and the Democracy Matters national conversation. And under that last heading, he has included a link to the Local Governance Review joint statement, which was just published on the 19th of September. So we just really ask if board members have any questions, and if you raise them, we can take them back to Richard.
Yeah, I have to say, I had not clicked on the link for the Democracy Matters. So I will have to look at that afterwards. And I should have mentioned it in the Community Planning Aberdeen Board minutes of the 29th of April. That was an action to follow up. Any question we can ask Mr. McCallum before the next meeting? Yes.
It's not really a question, just a comment. It's very good to see our success with the Fairer Futures Partnership for Aberdeen. I think that's going to lead to really good outcomes. I think that's something for us to welcome. Thanks.
Would any comments or question online? No. If you got any comments and question on the papers, especially if you click on Democracy Matter, we'll be happy. I'm sure Ms. Crombie will be happy. Michelle will be happy to forward any comments and questions to the Scottish Government. I think it works better to have that in writing than to have a verbal update. It makes a lot more sense. But let's make sure we feedback as well to the Scottish Government. Okay, so happy to agree with us. We go on the next one, which is strategic business 2.1, which is Scottish Enterprise Strategy presentation. So I will leave, gentlemen, it's room is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Gogo is going to pull up the slides for us. We have a short slide deck, but just by way of introduction, I'm Matt Lockley, Head of Innovation and Place for Scottish Enterprise, covering the North East and Tay Cities regions. Currently, my colleague Jamie Bell, also in the Innovation and Place team, covering a similar geography. So we're both hopefully well-known faces to you around this table in terms of the work we've been doing in the region over several, if not many, years. So happy to be here today to introduce Scottish Enterprise's new corporate plan and strategy to you. Before Gogo gets the slide up, I just, by way of a bit of background, this corporate plan was launched actually at an Aberdeen company out in Dice at Verloom by the First Minister and our Chief Exec, Adrian Gillespie, back in January. So obviously some work being done up to that point, launched in January. So we have been kind of working towards this new corporate plan since then. And over the course of the sort of eight or 9 months since it was launched, obviously we've been operationalising a lot of what I'll talk about today in terms of how we do our business and how we're structured and so on. So we bear that in mind. This was launched back in January, so some of this is kind of moving forward from that point. Gogo's got the slides up. Can people online see those? Okay. Slideshow. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Gogo. If you could move on to the next slide, Gogo. Just a couple of slides here about background about Scottish Enterprise. I'm sure most around the table will know who we are, but just by way of a reminder, We are the National Economic Development Agency for Scotland. We're a kind of an arm's length from the Scottish Government. We play a leading role in delivering the government's ambitions around the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. That is a guiding kind of strategy for us to work towards. And we focus most of our efforts on enabling significant long-term change and transformation of Scotland's economy. And we'll come on to a bit more about what we mean by that in terms of how we do our work and what our objectives are. But clearly, all of that is underpinned by some principles that we very kind of chime with yourselves around strong relationships, clarity of role in terms of public sector delivery, being flexible, dynamic and relevant to the type of business we want to achieve, solutions focused and outward looking and insightful. So those kind of principles underpin everything that we're trying to achieve. Next slide, please, Gogo. A bit about the size of the organisation. So some numbers here. I won't go through them all, but you can see, we have an annual budget of approximately £300 million. That's made up of capital funding, revenue funding, which is largely our staff overhead. And then we also have a financial transactions budget, which is essentially loan funding that we use to support business investments. So that annual budget is relatively fixed. We have circa 1,300 staff, and you see a bit of a breakdown there in terms of some of the numbers of where those staff are placed. So, for example, we have over 250 staff working in our international arm, Scottish Development International. So it gives you a kind of sense of the type of business that we are in terms of the organisational structure. Next slide, Gogo. Some high level numbers here in terms of what we've achieved. So in the last 5 years, again, I won't go through these in any detail. You can see them in the slide deck. I think what might be more interesting for this group and this partnership is what we've delivered in this region. So I'll take it kind of a layer down, but in the last financial year, so 23-24, we've supported circa 1,200 real living wage jobs being created in the region, over £20 million of investment in innovation, and over £408 million of increased international sales. So we do have these numbers on a regional basis. That's for the whole region, so it's city and shire. It's more difficult for us to split that down any further, but we can provide a kind of a more discrete set of numbers around the regional perspective on what we've delivered. If that's helpful, we can maybe append that to the minute of this meeting for members to have a look at in more detail. Next slide, Gogo. So our new corporate plan responded to a number of factors, a number of drivers, largely noted here, and again, be common to a lot of public sector partners. We have our own challenges and pressures, both from a policy perspective, but also from an economy perspective around emissions reduction, climate change. Obviously, the key focus of our organisation is economic growth. So how do we respond to that kind of weakness in the economic growth forecast and system? High energy costs and the cost of living and so on was a pressure for us. And then more general pressures around things like public spending constraint and I guess a long-term perspective on public sector budget. So these kind of things drove our consideration of what our new strategy needed to look like and have helped us shape the new corporate plan and I suppose underpin our approach, which is much more focused now, much more targeted than it maybe was previously. Next slide, Gogo. So our response to those challenges is to focus much more clearly, I think, and hopefully much more distinctly on opportunities for economic transformation at a regional and national level that drive significant improvements in innovation, investment and international. Those are our three delivery pillars, if you like. So innovation, investment, international remain our core kind of delivery vehicles. And we're really looking to invest in projects and activities that bring all of those three things together. So where Scottish Enterprise can add the most value and the best value, but deliver real kind of significant step change in economic performance. And that shapes our missions approach, which I'll come on to. We also are very clear about our responsibilities and the leadership we want to show around net zero, fair work, equalities and diversity. And again, I'll mention that towards the end of the presentation, but we really want to kind of harness and embrace those factors, if you like, as drivers of productivity and competitiveness rather than being a kind of a tick box exercise. We want to really embed them in economic growth in Scotland and make that part of the kind of unique Scottish economy in terms of how we position our economy and investment opportunities and so on, those being seen as, you know, productivity drivers rather than blockers. There's a link here to our megatrends work, and if you get the time, I'd really recommend you have a look at that megatrends document that's linked here. Again, it gives you a bit more background as to why we're making some of the changes that we are, and has a bit more of the kind of the detailed data around some of the mega trends we're seeing around things like, you know, everything being data driven, for example, global marketplace, and then things like climate change. So if you do have the time and the inclination, that mega trends document is really quite user friendly, but also quite insightful, I think, in terms of our take on the future economy and direction of travel. And obviously, again, critical to public sector reform and public service reform, but our corporate plan is very much about how we work more efficiently and effectively and deliver better value for money. Next slide, go. Thanks. So this is in kind of diagrammatic form, but you can see here our three delivery pillars: international, investment, innovation. We talk a lot about the sweet spot. It's not, you know, maybe not my favorite word, but that bit in the middle where those three things come together is where we see Scottish enterprise having the most transformational impact. So if we can bring projects and initiatives together that contain all three of those elements, we think that that's where we can add the most value. And then around the edge, you'll see in the yellow blocks, energy transition, scaling innovation, and capital investment to drive productivity. And those are our three principal new missions, which I'll come on to, and Jamie will kind of describe in more detail. But so that's the real change in terms of our corporate plan, is those three missions now being really sort of front and center in terms of what we deliver and how we structure ourselves and how we invest in the economy in the future. Next slide, go. So those three missions, just a bit more detail from me, and then I'll hand over to Jamie to kind of bring that to a kind of more regional picture on that. But the missions are around energy transition, as you'd expect, this region very strongly placed for that. So we have a mission team and a mission directorate looking at energy transition, the opportunities there, the challenge of net zero by 2045, and how we deliver a really strong, internationally competitive renewable energy industry in Scotland by 2030. So we've got kind of interim timelines around that, and streams of work around hydrogen, carbon capture, offshore wind, and so on. And again, that will all be very familiar to you in this region in terms of what we're doing and our work around that. The second mission is around scaling innovation. This one does have a specific focus on what we're calling industries of the future. So we've identified 5 specific industries that we think Scotland has particular strengths in and particular opportunities in. So they are things like space, life sciences, fintech, industrial biotech. So that's particularly important for projects such as those at Grangemouth, for example, and then quantum and photonics. So we have a basket of 5 priority sectors under innovation where we really want to kind of significantly focus our efforts, because we recognise that Scotland has specific strengths in those areas, and ecosystems and assets that can drive enhanced innovation. And the final mission that we have is around productivity. So Scotland has poor productivity performance. The UK in general does, but Scotland is also particularly weak in productivity. So what we're looking to do here is invest in businesses, invest in business infrastructure, so things like facilities and manufacturing space and so on, that help us kind of turn the dial around productivity. But it also includes things like workplace change, workplace transformation. Our digital economy programs sit under this productivity mission, recognising that it's a kind of cross-cutting theme around how we use digital to enhance industrial performance going forward. So that's a kind of high-level overview of where we are with the missions and how they're kind of shaping what we do going forward. Jamie's going to talk through a bit about how that relates to what we do in the region, and then I'll summarise at the end, and then we'll hopefully open for questions and any comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Gogo, can you move on slide? Thanks. So what I'd like to do now is to try and translate some of the kind of high-level strategic areas of our focus to
the region itself to Aberdeen in the northeast. What does this mean for Aberdeen in the northeast? So if we take the energy transition mission that Matt referred to first off. So really what we're looking at here is acceleration of technology innovation, supply chain capability and investment in key infrastructure such as our ports and our harbours. These are all critical assets to enable the energy transition in Scotland and indeed the northeast and Aberdeen. So within the local economy, we support the development of the energy transition zone, which you have in front of you on the slide, adjacent to the new harbour as part of Port of Aberdeen, and comprises a number of specialist campuses which comprise marine, offshore wind, hydrogen, innovation and skills development. So all critical aspects of the energy transition work that we're engaged in. Specifically, we've contributed £2 million to the Energy Incubation and Scale-Up Hub within the zone. That's actually based out at Altons. And that's along with BP and Scottish Government's Energy Transition Fund. Construction is underway and it will provide industrial and collaboration space for manufacturing, supply chain development and technology research. So hopefully a really strong asset for the development of the zone. The National Floating Offshore Wind Innovation Centre is already open, and you probably saw some publicity about that in recent times. That's in the heart of the energy transition zone. It's the UK's first innovation centre focused purely on offshore wind technology and delivered by Ore Catapult. It will provide 4,000 metres squared of workshop, R&D and office space for organisations and companies in the energy supply chain. So again, another really beneficial asset. SE's work with energy transition zone specifically is captured in a memorandum of understanding that we've recently developed, and that will take us through to 2031, fostering a close collaboration and co-investment to deliver significant economic gains for Scotland and the region. So that's really about demonstration of our commitment to the city and the wider region's economic future, really to try and protect and sustain the region's future. If you can move on, Google. So this slide is really just trying to, I suppose, demonstrate the geographic scale of the opportunity for Aberdeen and the wider northeast, but in terms of offshore wind specifically in the north, in terms of projects in the North Sea and hydrogen development as well. So it's really just a pictorial illustration, and obviously you can see Aberdeen at the kind of epicentre, if I can say that, in relation to these types of developments. So a huge prize to be gained for the city and the region. Move on. The second mission is around scaling innovation. So as you'll appreciate, the region and the city in particular is renowned for its innovative mindset. Some of that's founded in the strength and the nature of the energy economy and the energy sector. And the energy transition that I just previously highlighted does exemplify that spirit of innovation that exists within the region and the city. However, innovation is not exclusive to energy, and I'm sure you'll be aware that there are other sectors in the region that are equally innovative and also involved and looking to gear up to the new opportunities coming forward. So I'd just like to highlight a couple that we've been engaged with. Life sciences, first off. We've contributed £2 million towards the construction costs of BioHub at Forester Hill. An impressive looking building it is. If you ever get the chance to go, it's definitely worth a visit. So that's a city region deal project led by Opportunity Northeast and provides 4,000 metres squared of dedicated lab space, collaboration, office accommodation for established and growing life sciences businesses, startups and spin-outs from the university. The BioHub was officially opened in May. Will support up to 440 new jobs, full-time equivalents, generating economic output of 40 million plus per annum over the next 10 years. So a really significant project to support that growing sector. Another city region deal project on the right-hand side of the slide is the Seed Pod Food and Drink Innovation Hub. So that's
really designed around the supporting the North East's strengths within the food and drink sector. And that is designed to support or pilot advanced manufacturing, technology, and inspire new product development at the site at Graveston. And again, that's another project where we've put in significant amounts of capital in the region of £2 million to support the development and build costs of Seed Pod. Worth pointing out also in relation to the wider innovation piece that we've also formed another memorandum of understanding with Innovate UK. That was launched in November of last year, and that's really designed to encapsulate our shared innovation objectives and aims to try and optimise funding opportunities for companies in Scotland and the region. So, it's positioning ourselves in terms of our lead innovation collaboration with Innovate UK at a national level and supporting the regional collaboration as well. One of the initiatives arising from this MOU is the development of a regional innovation plan. So a couple of these are being developed already in Scotland. The North East is now developing its own one, so that's something that Innovate UK, Scottish Enterprise and regional partners will be taking forward in the coming 2 or 3 months. Move on, Gogo. The final mission that Matt has referred to was the increasing productivity through capital investment. So capital investment, as I'm sure you're aware, is a key driver of productivity and is really about enabling Scotland's business base to become much more internationally competitive. This slide illustrates the position of Scotland in relation to other OECD countries, and you can see we're languishing in that bottom quartile of companies in terms of the amount of capital investment that businesses are injecting. So there is a challenge there, a huge challenge. So the intention or the aim is to try and move Scotland up that ranking, certainly into the 3rd quartile of countries for capital investment. The trick or challenge here is about how do we leverage in that investment from external sources, not just reliant on public, but looking at private, international equity investors. So that's a big challenge for Scottish Enterprise, big challenge for all public bodies, including Scottish Government. If you can move on, Gogo. And specifically in relation to this particular mission, worth highlighting a couple of projects that we've been engaged in recently in Aberdeen. So alongside investment that I referred to in a number of the previous projects that I've highlighted, we've also put in over £30 million of investment into the port's development, the expansion of the port. And that's really to help support the port and its trade, business, investment, its offshore wind capability, and also including the adjacent energy transition zone, and also capitalising on the North East Investment Zone, which is another recent initiative that we're involved in, a partnership activity we're involved in. We've supported some funding for the port's shore-to-power study, and that's led to the announcement last year by UK government of over £2 million to the port to design and deliver the first landside and vessel-side shore power system in Scotland. So all of this is designed to really move the region, specifically the port, up a level. And worth also highlighting our capital support that we provided to the new, not so new anymore, but the Exhibition and Conference Centre, which is recognition of the value of the venue in attracting major events and conferences that bring economic benefit, not just to this region, but to Scotland much more widely. So thanks, Gogo, if you can move on. And just one final slide from myself, and this relates to one of our underpinning key areas of activity. So it's not just about the 3 missions that Matt's highlighted, and I've highlighted there in terms of our project delivery, but we're also very mindful of the fact that we need to address areas of likes of net zero and also fair work. So these are key principles that feature as part of our strategy. And I'd just like to highlight the work in relation to the Fair Work agenda. Scottish Enterprise, through our colleague Martin Barry, co-chairs the Aberdeen Real Living Wage Action Group, which is sits under the Community Planning Aberdeen's Aberdeen Prospers theme. So there's been hugely significant progress since the start of this initiative, with some very positive outcomes to date. Work continues to drive towards further achievements, but this slide simply illustrates some of the kind of key achievements that have emerged through the work of the group. So you can see there, you know, that we're almost at 200% increase in terms of accredited employers since 2019. And if you bear in mind, you know, that was over the COVID pandemic period. I mean, that's really powerful achievement, really significant. And the work hasn't stopped. Ongoing work to try and aim for 165 accredited employers and over 2,500 uplifts by the end of 2025. And I know Chairman Councillor Arlott has been very involved in this particular initiative, so thank you to him and the support of the Council in terms of driving this initiative forward. Some really good examples of private and third sector employers adopting the real living wage. First Bus, Catoni Engineering, Energy Transition Zone, Port of Aberdeen and ACFO have all signed up and accredited employers in terms of this initiative. So it's good to have these role models to allow to encourage and motivate others to sign up. So I think that probably is enough from myself. I'll pass back to Matt just to round off. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, if you could just go back a slide, thanks, Gogo. This is the last kind of formal slide that we've got, and it kind of basically summarises some of those principles. So continuing to work in partnership and collaboration, very important for us, and hopefully in this region, some of that is obvious from the things that Jamie outlined in terms of the energy transition zone, but we're also very active in the regional economic partnership. We work very closely with Opportunity North East. We're on their board. We're supporting the investment zone work. You know, we're quite heavily involved in those work streams around the investment zone. So, you know, that's obviously key to our way of working is partnership. We don't operate in a vacuum, and we're very clear about that. And we're very, very conscious that we can't deliver on our ambitions without working in partnership and without supporting our partners to deliver on their ambitions as well. Jamie's touched on the kind of fair work agenda and the work we're doing locally around real living wage, but fair work and net zero are critical to us. We have a kind of, to some extent, a bit of a carrot and stick approach to that. So any of our business investments, our business grants, for example, businesses have to sign up to fair work and net zero conditionality. So part of our grant giving structure, you know, businesses must comply with some of our terms and conditions around fair work and net zero. But the flip side of that is that we offer net zero academies to help businesses understand what they can do to kind of change their business practice to kind of comply with and get ahead of the game in terms of net zero. And similarly with fair work, we offer training and advice around fair work obligations, but also how employers and companies can become kind of exemplars, if you like, around fair work. So we try and do that in a kind of rounded way through both conditionality, but also through offering training and advice. And that, I think, it leads into the tackling inequalities work that we've spoken about in terms of real living wage. And you'll see that, well, I think on one of the very early slides, one of our key metrics that we report to the government on is not jobs created, it's real living wage jobs created. So we're very clear that that is our, you know, one of our main drivers. So that's how we kind of, you know, contribute to those tackling inequalities agendas as well. I think probably pause there, Chair, and open for any observations and comments, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, Jamie. Very interesting, particularly as you say, Jamie, I'm very much involved in it. I've got to thank Martin Barry for taking the lead on it. I think it's important, and on the language as well, I'm delighted by you use the proper language, real living wage. I get a bit not sure about when you talk about fair work, because fair work sometimes is just like the living wage, an excuse not to try to be accredited at a real living wage. Accreditation of real living wage is so important, and I'm saying that the work of Martin Barry in the Rio Living Wage group has been fantastic. And not only we've got a big uptake in Aberdeen, but also it's a great example for our friends and colleagues in Aberdeenshire. Aberdeenshire Council is going to join us because now we are Rio Living Wage employers as well. So it's good to see that they are following up on our leads. So I'll have to thank you for that as well, because I think Scottish Enterprise very much taking the lead on this. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Blake first.
Thank you, convener. Thank you for that presentation. That was really interesting. There was two things I wanted to ask about. What was the timeline? So you talked about the regional innovation plan that you were looking to develop, but what was the timeline around that? And actually, my other question is just because I've missed them. But what were the 5 areas? I noted down about 3 or 4. What were the 5 areas for development that you were talking about? Thank you.
I can take the second part of that, and we can maybe put our heads together on the first part, Jamie. Maybe you've got a more recent update than I have. But on the future industry sectors, space, life sciences, human health together from how we're describing them, industrial biotech, fintech. I think the last one is, I always get lost on this one, quantum and photonics.
That was one.
And that's one that I know absolutely zero about. So
Yeah, it's lasers and light and applications. Yeah, Pete's that's specialist.
Pete can help me.
So computing, but in a completely different way, using light and quantum physics.
Okay, thanks very much for the question, for the answer from both. Aberdeen University to the rescue. Jamie, you wanted to add something?
Not on Pete's explanation, but on the first point you mentioned in terms of the innovation plan. So the work's actually just kicked off in relation to that. The intention, I think, is to try and get that plan. It's quite a short timeline we're working to. So try and get that plan agreed by the end of this financial year.
Okay. So
Yeah, so it's dependent on a few things coming into play, but Innovate UK are very keen to drive this forward. And I think the big carrot here is that, if we come up with a set of priorities that we all agreed across the region that are important in terms of innovation, then Innovate UK can come in with financial support to help with the delivery of these.
Okay.
So that's the real focus, and
Right,
they're keen to get that nailed down as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Cake.
Thank you, Chair. Many thanks for the presentation. It's really quite exciting to see the business on innovation that's underway and the various economic transformation projects that we're looking at. The success of all of these does need to be person-centred. So I'm very keen to find out more about our proposals for making Aberdeen a living wage city. Some really encouraging increases in the numbers of accreditation and in the numbers of employee uplifts. So just to get a sense of, is that an ongoing journey, or are we looking at, we're only looking at targets up to the end of 2025, so which would be an additional 50, another 50 accreditations from employers. So is there a long-term vision for with perhaps performance monitoring in place to keep track of what's happening and to give encouragement to the employers?
I would say yes, probably. I get it'll be dependent. This initiative came out from actually the Community Planning Aberdeen partnership and specifically the Aberdeen Prospers group. So I would expect that the group itself will be looking at these results and to try and define as to whether there's continuing appetite and demand out there or in fact encourage and stimulate that demand out there beyond 2025. That was the initial term in terms of the change request that had been put forward for community planning support. So, just going by the way that the figures are moving in the direction of travel in all of this, I would expect that, there'll be a longer term and ongoing need to encourage employers across the city to continue to support this initiative, because at the end of the day, it's a selling point for these businesses also. If you can promote yourself as a real living wage business in a real living wage city, then there's obvious economic benefits to attracting in investment, but also employees as well into the region. So I think the answer is, I think I would expect that would be the move, but I think the group will have to consider these results. Perhaps the chairman might have a view on that as well, given his role.
I mean that's really positive to hear.
Yeah.
Really good to hear. So it's very much a case of keeping that focus on Aberdeen prospers, and indeed encouraging the employers, because this is all about teamwork, as you say, and trying to make sure that everybody's aware of the advantages, because everybody benefits. Thanks.
Thank you. The big advantage, of course, it's make sure that you get the recruitment that you need, and not only recruitment as well, keeping the staff that you have, and real living wage is very much key part of this.
Yeah.
You wanted to add something, Jamie?
Just one other thing to mention on that in terms of that promotion. Martin actually advised me that I think next month the Chamber of Commerce in their business bulletin will be running a piece on the real living wage, and that'll be another opportunity to promote real living wage amongst the Aberdeen business community, or the North East business community, in fact, because if you consider the reach of the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses it connects to, there's further opportunity to encourage that uptake.
Yeah, and now we've got Aberdeenshire on board, so it'll be great, and we'll be able to share our expertise as well. I've got Councillor John Cook. John.
Thanks, and thanks for that. Yeah, and thanks for the presentation, which actually made me feel quite optimistic, although I've got a note of pessimism. Part of the mission is to promote an internationally competitive energy transition industry, which is great. So my pessimistic question is, how confident are you that you can ensure that happens in a way that Scotland gets the clever stuff, the high added value stuff, rather than just bolting together stuff that's been manufactured elsewhere? And kind of what lies behind that is that it seems to me a lot of the wind turbines that we have are manufactured in places like Denmark, notwithstanding the fact that we've got facilities in Scotland that could be manufacturing them, but are just lying idle at the minute. So yeah, just how confident are you that we can capture the high added value stuff rather than the lower value stuff?
I think we may need to come back with some further content on that for you, Councillor Cook. But I think my take would be that that's a lot of what we're trying to do with this mission around energy transition, is make sure that we have the capabilities in Scotland to be able to capture that high value add. So a lot of the work that the energy transition teams in Scottish Enterprise are doing is working very closely with, for example, ScotWind providers and developers to understand the timelines for delivery of ScotWind projects, and work with supply chain companies to build capacity and ensure that we've got the right infrastructure. And Jamie mentioned, for example, some of the work we're doing around ports and portside infrastructure. So we're doing a lot of work with some of the larger ports around Scotland to make sure that they have the capacity and the kind of onshore capacity to help deliver some of that manufacturing abilities. I think whether Scotland will ever kind of have massive manufacturing capacity in this sector or not is a question mark, given that it's a very kind of fast moving marketplace, and there are already, as you say, well established manufacturing locations around Europe in particular. But certainly it's something that we're working very closely with the sector on, and we do have a very close relationship with the Scottish Government around infrastructure funding for ScotWind particularly, and looking at how we can deploy that to make sure that we don't miss these opportunities when they come along. So it's a bit of a kind of mixed response. I think we're trying to focus on those areas where Scotland has the key strengths, and some of that is around those very high value add technical skills, not necessarily manufacturing, but the kind of expertise around the planning and design and the technical aspects of this. But certainly we're very mindful of the opportunities around some of the manufacturing. So we're working with SDI, our international arm, very closely on securing international investment. You'll have probably seen some of the announcements around Sumitomo, for example, not in this region, but up in Highland, around their cabling facility there. So I think you'll see more of that as ScotWind develops. You'll see more of those kind of investments landing in Scotland, and hopefully some of those will be in this region.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. That was great. And that will lead us on investments as well. I have to say, to reassure John as well, that at lunchtime I was at the art gallery, it's a fantastic art gallery, welcoming Scotland Europa. And I think it's important to see that coasting Aberdeen City Council and Aberdeen University having people coming from Brussels and having that them deciding to come up to Aberdeen to recognise a place of innovation and investment. It's important. And so your colleague there, SDI was there. I think it's important we've got that collaboration with everybody else. There were a question asked, and you talked about private investment. We know as a city region have always been very good and very proud to be able to get 50, 70% sometimes of our investment when I think about Aberdeen City Region deal. How much do you think, how much more will we have to dig to get that private investments to back public investment in the years to come? And have you got any ways, any project on that, or any ideas how to make sure that continues?
Yeah, I don't know if we could give you any quantification of that, but it's this whole point about building in or leveraging external funding is going to be vitally important. And we've got colleagues in our international arm of Scottish Enterprise, SDI, who are actively out there working overseas to try and leverage in and promote Scotland and trying to attract in that international investment. Because, as you well know, we can't be reliant on the public sector to continue to support these projects and initiatives on their own. I think we've been kind of fortunate in this region in that we've had a strong private sector input and presence. And as I mentioned, I think in at least one or two of these projects that I've highlighted, we've had private sector actually taking the lead in terms of driving these projects forward, and then obviously leverage in some ways the public sector monies. So that's a model that probably doesn't exist in other parts of the country. So can we replicate that elsewhere, but also being cognizant of the fact that businesses themselves are strapped, so there'll be less money to go around. But I think if we can demonstrate that we're working or developing impactful, transformative projects, then the hope is that the private sector will come in and back these, support these, and particularly when you've got such a strong energy supply chain in this particular region, it's something that we should be looking to capitalise on. So it's probably not fully answering the question, but it's something that we're very mindful of and active in trying to pull in that extra investment.
It was a very difficult question to answer, I'm sure. Susan, how about you?
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess two questions from me. Really enjoyed the presentation. Are we learning as much as we can from your engagement with other community planning partnerships? And the second is, are we making sufficient connects from the learning? So I was at the Real Living Wage Awards and hearing the stories about workplaces changing hours of work to support good family relationship developments by supporting individuals to eat with their families, etc. So quite a lot of learning across the different strands in community planning at LOIP. So from your perspective, are we capturing that learning and sharing it sufficiently well?
It's a good question. I think it's fair to say that our engagement with community planning partnerships is mixed across the country. So I think in Aberdeen, for example, we're very active clearly around the particular priority around living wage and real living wage. that's quite unusual for Scottish Enterprise more generally. So more generally across the country, we don't necessarily see ourselves having a very active role in community planning just because of the nature of some of the work that community planning partners do. It doesn't necessarily fit very strongly with our approach as we've outlined today. So I think it's a bit of a moving feast in terms of how we engage with community planning partnerships and how we best do that. I think, as I say, we've got a really strong example here of that particular work stream around real living wage. Whether we're doing anything, I suppose something we can take away, Jamie, whether we're doing anything as a kind of partnerships team within Scottish Enterprise to look across our engagement and see where there might be best practice that we could capture better. I think that's certainly something we could take away. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that we do have quite a kind of patchwork of engagement with community planning across the piece, and it's something we're mindful of in terms of how we do that better and more effectively for partners and for ourselves in terms of our resource and how we best engage with community planning. So I think it's something that's an ongoing kind of discussion for us internally and with our partners.
I was just, Councillor Allard was asking me, we did have one question or two. I guess the second bit was I'm very, very conscious around the learning that we are capturing through the real living wage work locally, and whether we are taking that learning and embedding it in things like our community wealth building, in the Children's Services Board, and sharing just some of the practices that we could adopt that would support our ambition of giving children the best start in life.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. It's maybe something for the group to consider as to how we kind of embed that across the different work streams and across the LOIP more widely. So it's maybe something actually that perhaps Aberdeen Prospers could come along to either the board or management group or other LOIP groups to actually present and demonstrate the kind of method they've applied and how it could actually be applied in some of these other LOIPs, and maybe inform some of the other objectives or targets they've got within the LOIPs. But we can certainly take that back to Martin and see if there's scope to kind of roll that out a bit widely. I'm not aware of any other community planning partnerships. I mean, we were engaged in 27 across the country, a greater or lesser extent, but there are one or two who have really driven the real living wage route. Dundee being one of them, we're also engaged with, but not many others have really made this really strong drive through community planning to push it on, and particularly into the private sector. So I think that it's a good example, in fact, maybe a kind of role model for maybe other community planning partnerships to look at.
Thank you for that. And it's a good idea for the group. We've got the NHS there, and we've got some private partners there as well. In fact, it's one of the private businesses who is sharing it. And we've got the real, hour living hour as well wage, which is a new things to come on. So any promotion back when our partners want to help us, and Martin Barry on that will be very helpful. If there's no more questions, last to thank both Jamie and Matt for the presentation. Thank you very much again. We'll go on 2.2 is a collaboration for health equity in Scotland. Michelle Crombie again.
Thanks, Councillor Allard. I think Angela provided an update on this paper under the minutes, so it's really just to confirm that an application has been submitted, and if there are any questions from board members on this paper.
No question online or in the room. I think Angela has already given us a good feedback, and I asked as well if something could be done. So I didn't see the recommendation. Is it to note or to agree? It's for noting. So I'm really happy to note this. Let's go on 2.3, review community planning Aberdeen's approach to improving outcomes. Again, Michelle Crombie, the recommendation on page 94.
Thanks, Councillor Allard. This report just advises the board that following the latest refresh of the LOIP and the locality plans, as discussed, we have started a review of how we do community planning in the city. The intention is just to take some time and create some space to take a step back and ask ourselves what we've achieved over the last 8 years in terms of improving outcomes, and consider how effective our approach to community planning in the city is. Certainly to achieve improved outcomes, or at least prevent poorer outcomes, which I think is something that we have to consider as well. So the review has already started, but the paper really just presents the terms of reference for the review. The bulk of the review will take place this year, with a view to reporting on the findings at the beginning of next year, so that can inform the development process of the next LOIP, which we will start on next year already. We've set out the methodology for the review on page 93, and you'll see that part of this is the National Community Plan and self-evaluation that the Improvement Service have been facilitating for us. So I wanted to just take this opportunity to highlight that board members have been invited to a session tomorrow morning to go over the findings of the questionnaire. However, we have had a few apologies for that, and some of the members that can attend can only attend for part of the time. So we've got 7 members that have confirmed attendance so far, and as I say, not necessarily for the full time. So I just really wanted to check in with the board if you felt it would be better to reschedule this to another time when we can get better attendance, or if you would want us to progress tomorrow as planned.
Anybody who was going to attend, I was going to attend, but anybody else who was going to attend would prefer not to be rescheduled? Or is there agreement around the room that rescheduling may be a good idea to attract more people? But Selachu, who just told us he's not sure to make it either. So are we happy for Michel Crombie to come back with another date, if possible, and maybe doing a little poll to see who of the members will be available to try to maximize the presence this time? Is that possible, Michelle?
Of course, we can do that. I'm conscious that, of course, October holidays are coming up, but we'll do a poll as you suggest and try and get another date.
Okay. Yes, Angela.
Councillor Allard, I just was thoughtful about the date of our next meeting is the 27th of November. So would it just make sense to maybe make that the substantive business item for the 27th? Because just conscious that you've got the whole time frame and all the work that you're doing, and we've all got the 27th in our diary.
Everybody check the diary quickly to see if they've got a lot happening as a 27. I'm sure I can arrange that. Maybe that's one of the data as a main proposal. Thank you very much, Angela. And maybe ask all the members to see what they think about that. That might be the way to go ahead if it's not too late.
Yep, I think that's fine. We are doing some research with outcome improvement groups and the management group as well, so we'll be able to work on that feedback and then correlate that with the feedback we get from the board. So I think that should work out fine for timing, and I'll check that with the improvement service.
Yes, Councillor Gregg. Can we make sure we put that out now? That is cancelled. The earlier, always the better. If somebody could do that, that would be great. I had one of the questions, the recommendations, note the application we talked about, if it's successful, that will be part of the collaboration of health equity in Scotland. That's part of 2.2, but it may impact on the methodology and timescale of this review. Can you have some feedback on that?
I think that was just to say that obviously if we're successful in that, we will want to work as part of the collaboration to think about how we review how we do community planning with them. So they might have some different ideas about how we explore that. So we will still get to our findings at the beginning of the year, but some of it might evolve over the period if we are successful in that collaboration.
Remind me, 27th November will be no by then. I don't remember the date.
Yes, I think I'm just frantically trying to get the dates, Councillor Allard. I think it's early November we get to know the outcome of the Marmot decision. I do have it somewhere in my OneNote.
It's not. I don't think it's in the paper actually, the date, but I think we will know by then.
Okay, very good. Everybody happy with the recommendation, and we've cancelled. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just sorry.
November.
It's what I thought. I thought it was early November. I didn't want to say. Okay, that's brilliant. So if everybody's happy with the recommendation, we've got no more question. So we'll go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Angela, for the proposal, and for Michelle to let us know about this. And everybody can look at the diary and making sure we are trying to be on the 27th. 2.3, review of community planning, Aberdeen's approach to improving outcomes. Michelle Crombie again.
That's the one we've just covered. So we're on 2.4.
I didn't scratch this. 2.4 population health plan. This is Susan now. You've got the chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate this is a really busy agenda. So we sent out all of the papers in advance, including the presentation. Currently, you will have seen from the papers that Scottish Government policy leads have undertaken quite an extensive process of engagement with partners to develop a framework that will improve population health in Scotland. There are a number of documents that are in preparation at the moment, including some evidence papers to set out the rationale as to the direction of travel outlined in the framework. I think for myself, I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us, and it is a great opportunity to be able to comment and engage in the plan development. The plan set or the framework sets out why such a framework is needed, and I always think it's helpful just to refresh our memory as to the data that we're all familiar with. So we know people are dying earlier. We know people are spending more of their lives in poorer health, and if we look at our most disadvantaged communities, females can live up to 20 years in poor health, and that we are certainly over the last decade seeing an increasing gap in life expectancy between our most affluent and our most deprived communities, and that gap is around 10 years looking at the data locally. So looking back, absolutely worsening trend in terms of health outcomes, looking at the Scottish burden of disease that basically tells us if we take no action, then we are forecast to see a 21% increase in the burden of disease, and that is despite a reduction in our population. And 2/3 of that increase will be driven by cancers, cardiovascular disease, neurological conditions, which are largely preventable and amenable to health care. It won't affect everyone equally. Again, the absolute burden will be in the 65 to 85 years, and just to put that in perspective, we're talking about the 45 years right now, and that is why some of the discussion we had earlier around the economy is so vitally important. We're very familiar with supporting young people. We're very familiar with the pressures around ageing well, but absolutely we need to take a whole life course event. Also looking at the forecasts, it is likely that we will have a double the burden of disease in our most deprived areas. So again, tackling inequalities, which is the purpose we are all here today, is absolutely critical. So looking then at, so what determines health? And again, the framework sets out the 4 pillars of population health, which is a helpful reminder around social and economic factors playing the biggest role in determining our health outcomes, our physical environment, the health behaviours, and only a small part, 20%, attributed to access to quality health and care. But it's very easy when we look at the pillars of population health to think that's somebody else's business, when absolutely the evidence shows that we can all make a contribution to each of those 4 pillars. But if we use healthy weight as an example, so often when we talk about 2/3 of our adult population are overweight or obese, we often talk about the answer is educating our population. However, if you live in our most disadvantaged areas, you would need to spend 55% of your disposable income compared to 11% in affluent. So we've not all been given equal chances. Equally, if you are living in one of our disadvantaged areas, the shops around you are more likely to sell products that are harmful to your health. So we need to ensure that there is availability of healthy food. And finally, for those of you have all of those determinants and you want to access support available to lose weight, currently, the demand on our services are such that we could only support 0.3% of those that are eligible. So we're not going to treat our way out of overweight and obesity, which is why it is fundamentally important that we take this whole system approach, that we work together and determine what are the things running across all of those pillars that we can do together to improve population health outcomes. The 4 pillars approach isn't new to us in the Northeast through the Alliance. We have signed up to this. And one of the things that we've identified through the higher cost of living work is when we map out what we're doing, absolutely, we will have things happening in each of those pillars. But when we looked at higher cost of living, the outcomes, we're not shifting the dial. 1 in 5 children are still living in poverty, which in the Northeast is equivalent to 770 classrooms full of children living in poverty. So we know we can do better than we are at the moment, and we know that we need to work together to make a difference. So the framework then sets out a series of 8 questions, which are quite detailed. And chatting to the chair and Michelle, what we thought would be a helpful focus for the limited time we have today is to actually question ourselves around, absolutely, we've got a lot of work going on, but what do we think needs to be different? What do we think needs to be seen in the framework or the plan that is due to be published in December that would support our efforts here in Aberdeen? We're not going to lose the rest of the questions. Our intention is to ping out the 8 questions to all members, asking for some feedback and thoughts on those questions. That will then go into the management group to consider to form our response back. So quick canter through why this is important, and I'll open up for discussion. Thank you.
Anybody online or in the room? Yeah, Angela?
I just thoughtful, Susan, in the points that you made specifically about further impact on deprived communities, and just thoughtful about the review that we're doing of community planning. And I guess that drives into how effective is our approach to locality planning and the priorities that we place in there. So maybe we just need to give more thought to how we're going to do that review on the locality approach. And I think if we are successful with Marmot, then I think that will definitely be something that we would want to seek early advice on, wouldn't it, in the prioritisation. Susan, I'm also just thoughtful that we had the CPP event on population and obesity. And I know that we don't have Martin here today from HDRC, but Councillor Allard, there's a write-up from that event, both the morning session on the population trends and the discussion in the afternoon for obesity. I think colleagues are working hard to get the write-up. So again, that'll be circulated to partners. But Susan, anything more you'd maybe want to say about the focus on localities that we need to think about?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, we've got some really good examples of good practice happening. I guess the question we've got, are we doing it at pace and scale that will make a difference at population health level? I don't think we do. I think the second bit for me is, what are the things we need to come together on? I think we do describe what each organisation's contribution could be, but how do we integrate those? How do we wrap them round the people that we are living in our localities to support them to a different outcome? So I think the question that we need to focus in on is how rather than what. I think we've got quite a lot of evidence around what we should be doing. I think for me, the challenge is, how do we do it? Are we collaborating as well as we need to collaborate? And are we truly being person-centred in the support we provide to the most disadvantaged in our communities?
Anybody else? Just wanted to add on that as well. You know, we're talking about healthy weight, and that's important, and talking about well-being as opposed to obesity and, you know, bad health. And it's important that we do that. But when you talk about that, we're not shifting the dial. You know, we even don't have the proper data if our action is shifting the dial or not. Because let's not forget, in which circumstances we are in just now, a lot of it have got nothing to do about our action, about our inactions. We are very much so. How can we have, and Martin is not here today because is for ill health reason. I just want to make sure that we are not pushing too hard on telling us that we are not shifting the dial without checking that if we are in very difficult circumstances, which means that being at a standstill just now is maybe shifting the dial to a certain extent. So I want to have that approach as well, understanding a little bit better how our outcomes are, because I know we've got goals, but that goals might not be achieved because of the situation we are in. So how we take a different perspective on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if we look at the work that Marmot's been doing, certainly in the rest of the UK, the evidence would suggest that they haven't seen the same worsening in health outcomes as other areas, but they aren't able to demonstrate the improvement. However, if we look at some of our indicators, we are absolutely seeing a worsening. And I think we need to understand that they're within the financial environment we're in and the failure demand that each organisation is facing, it is very hard to shift the balance to ensure we are focusing in on prevention and early intervention. And I think that's a leadership challenge for all of us. And what I would say is, there isn't a blueprint for doing this. I think we've got a willingness, a commitment. I would say, Angela, whether we are successful around marketplaces or not, there's a lot that we will be able to learn from that and challenge ourselves. But certainly the evidence coming, it is around how do we ensure that we do wrap around people to provide that additional support, but equally challenge ourselves. Are we working as collaboratively as we could, and maybe blending those boundaries a little that we all know we have?
Thank you, Susan. So Marmot or not Marmot, we will keep on working very hard on prevention and on our partnership. Any other remarks or question on this? No? Oh, Councillor Cook. Yeah, John?
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree with everything that Susan said. I think in terms of the need to work together, I think there is willingness on the part of all parties to do that. But I do sometimes wonder if when we're doing our budget setting, so there's NHS Grampian doing its budget setting, the City Council doing its budget setting, the Integration Joint Board doing its budget setting, we're each doing our own thing, and we're all trying to cooperate, and we're all trying to focus on prevention, early intervention, but sometimes we don't maybe join it up enough. And I'm just wondering if there's, this is like top of the head stuff, and it may not be terribly practical, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of mechanism whereby those setting the budgets could liaise a wee bit before the budgets are set in tablets of stone, to make sure that what happens in one budget setting doesn't have an unintended adverse consequence in another area. And I'm very conscious saying that the finance officers in all three organisations are already really working their socks off. So quite how you find the time, I'm not sure, but I just thought I'd throw that half-baked suggestion into the mix.
Thank you very much for that, John. And before I take on Susan to respond to it, I'll have to say that we've seen a sea of change, and you've seen our approach, and I think Integration Joint Board will have the same kind of approach of approaching on impact, how it impacts people, how it impacts families, how it impacts society, communities. So I think having our budget on that way, and we had NHS coming through with finance, and we had the universities as well coming as well on the same point. So I think there is already that kind of synergy, but you may be right, John. We might be able to do more than that. Susan?
I was just wondering whether Angela would like to answer that, given she has invited our teams to come together.
Thank you, Councillor Allard, and thank you, Councillor Cook. We have been trying to work hard to do exactly as you've described, and not without its complexity, because there's slightly different timeframes and so on, but certainly for 24-25, police colleagues, fire colleagues, NHS Grampian, the two universities, the college and the council, senior officers came together to show and tell on budget saving options. As Councillor Allard said, with the publication of the council officer budget options for 25-26, certainly we're going back around with all partners again to look at the implications of any budget decisions that council makes, what that might do for partners, and that's been reciprocated as well. So Adam, the Chief Exec of NHS Grampian, is bringing his executive team to meet with City Council officers, and again through the structure that we as senior officers have in place. So we're attempting to do all of that. First and foremost, I guess, to make sure, Councillor Cook, there's no cost shunting going on, so we're not, moving costs from one cost pressure onto another system. But Susan said, just trying to really join up all of our pathways and integration, so that opportunity to join services up. And we've also done it from an estate point of view. Again, Police Scotland colleagues, nationally, been a lot of change around the estate. So again, just making sure we all understand the implications and the opportunities from some of those decisions for all of us as well. So I think we started it in 24-25. It's a new way of working. We're trying to navigate our way through all of that. And at some point, it might be useful to bring that back into community planning, so they understand on the where we are doing the contraction, how we're attempting to manage that responsibly. I guess Susan's challenge, rightly to all of us, for the money that we do have, have we got the right balance of that investment in terms of prevention versus downstream? And that's the challenge that Susan's bringing to bear to all of us as well, to make sure that we're all protecting that investment in. So early doors, Councillor Cook, on what our shorthand is show and tell. I'm sure we'll get a more technical professional name for it, but we're just trying to really build and create that discipline amongst us all at a local level.
Reassuring. I guess part of my comments were coloured by what's happened in previous years. So no, I think we're moving in the right direction, certainly.
Thank John. Pete wanted to.
Yeah, I had a specific question about the slide on page 140, Susan. Because looking at the range of key partners and wider stakeholders, I guess I was quite surprised not to see the expertise that exists in Scotland's universities not featuring explicitly as part of that.
Yeah, so what I would say is there's been a number of roundtable events, and as part of those roundtable events, individuals with specialist expertise have been brought together. So, for example, Shantini, who it links with, has been involved in the health inequalities roundtable, giving advice to government on best evidence, and that work continues to develop, including some of the work around should there be a national outcome target, and if so, what are the best indicators to measure that? So we've got academic colleagues around that as well.
Thank you.
Any other question or comments in the room or online? No, so we're happy to agree with the recommendations. Yep. So we'll go to the next one, which is 3.1, Community Planning Aberdeen Improvement Programme Quarterly Update and New Charters. So Michelle Crombie will take us through this item and pass over to the presenters as well.
Councillor Allard, so this is our regular update report on the LOIP Improvement Programme, which was reset following the refresh of the LOIP in April. You'll see from the report it advises members that we have 97 projects in the LOIP and 72 of those are underway, with 25 still to be initiated. Just wanted to highlight that when a new project is initiated, an improvement project charter is produced, which sets out the multi-agency theory of change for how it will achieve the aim. So the management group oversees this process of reviewing the charters and approving them, which includes a quality assessment to make sure that they're of a good standard and they set out clearly what the project team is aiming to do and how it will test changes to achieve that aim. So the report advises that at the last CPA management group, 9 project charters were approved for project initiation, and these are listed on page 169 of the pack for you to review. The charters are linked into each of the projects within the overview report where these have been approved. So you can drill down into the report to look at the charters, which is a good reference point for members to see what that theory of change is, but also where a project is live, we do link into the project update for each project. So you can drill down to that level as well to get the detail. But at a glance, you'll get an idea of progress across the LOIP through the RAGAN system within the report. The report shows that at this time we're largely on track. As I say, it's a new kind of improvement programme following the refresh of the LOIP. Where there are issues in the report, these have been flagged up as red or amber. And I'm happy to take questions on that if members have questions. Or we do also have colleagues joining us this afternoon for 3 of the improvement projects that have been submitted for national awards. So we've got 3 speakers today to talk about their submissions to those. So happy to take questions or go straight to the presenters. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, well, first of all, we've got Jim Johnston from Aberdeen Prospers. And so I'll just let you introduce yourself properly, Jim, and Gogo will pull up the slides.
Thanks. As it says on the slide, that's me. So I'm the service manager for city development. So I look after our business development activity, city development, regeneration, kind of more the soft side than the hard side, and various other things, including hydrogen projects. So this particular project sits within the business support element and is work that we've done. Can you flip to the next? I've only got 2 slides after my introductory slides. So go UK. Thank you. So this is a project that we commenced a couple of years back. The aim of the project was to support economically inactive people into business. Rationale for that is there's twofold rationale in terms of background. One, the business birth rate in Aberdeen has gone down over the last few years, partly due to COVID, partly due to the economic decline that we've been going through. Secondly, there's an opportunity, and if you're a fan of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, they're very much about getting people into being economically active. Is a great way of getting them out of poverty, possibly. And every time they do an action plan, the first priority is get people into jobs and get them into skills to do that. Reality of life is some people are not best suited to getting into a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-4 job. So self-employment and set up a business is possibly better suited for their activities. One of the secondary benefits of people getting into new business and set up a new business is they develop new skills to participate for participants. Previous life, I've done evaluations of business startup programs, and while the government thinks the fact their businesses have failed is a negative, what you discover when you went to talk to people, took a sample of people who'd gone through the process, started up and then moved on, most of them go into new jobs. The jobs are better paid, better prospects than they had before, and they attribute those skills that they've learned doing their self-employment or starting a business as a big part of that activity. So I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I'm a real kind of fan of that, kind of looking at it. The project itself was led by Business Gateway. Business Gateway at the time was a contracted out service. It's a shared service with Aberdeenshire Leading and Aberdeen City Council. As part of the last contract negotiations, we insisted that the contract had to include a community advisor, and that community advisor was a key part of this project. The project itself focused on activity in the priority areas, so that we were working with people at a locality level. The key thing for me and from my experience in the past has been that if you're really down in the local area, you develop a stronger relationship with potential entrepreneurs, potential people. You make them comfortable, you develop a rapport, you make the services more accessible, so they're not having to go to Bridge of Dawn to do their work. They can actually do stuff in the local area. The advisors are there. There's somebody that they see, somebody they trust. If you work really closely with local community groups, they bring them into a kind of engagement process with people they trust. They don't. People seem to think that we're all joined up, and if you're talking to me about starting a business, I'm going to tell the taxman. If only that was the case. So it just gives them that a bit more confidence and comfort about what they're doing. So we got a community-based advisor to work in Tory and the other areas on a 2-day-a-week basis regularly in these areas, so they were seen to be there. A lady's called Donna, so it's Donna that they talk to. They don't think about Business Gateway, they're working with Donna. You ask them who Business Gateway is, they go, oh, it's Donna. You know, that's the kind of the thing that you're kind of looking at, trying to develop. So you get that accessibility. Donna's able to then do the personalised support, work with partners that are already working in that community to make that forward. So I've listed there, you know, some of the partners that were there in terms of community groups. ABZ Works an important part of that in terms of that internal, for us, internal activity. ABZ works within my remit, so the employability and skills stuff's in my remit, so it's an easy for us to join the two bits together. And the Job Centre, DWP, and various other people, NESCOL as well. So developing those partnerships in the local area at a local level is the reason why this has been so successful. So just on terms of the target numbers, we looked at doing 50, and I'm glad to say we got to 53 for the period of time. So it's a success in terms of the numbers we got to. For me, the next steps is what happens next. So this is no mainstream Business Gateway approach to doing business support work. The gateway has been brought in-house. It's no longer contracted to Elevate. It's been brought in-house at Shire. We work very closely with Shire, the activity and the local based activity is part of their mainstream activity, which from a government point of view is great because it shows you that you've learned from it, you've exited out, and you're actually doing it as part of that activity. We've set a new target for creating 100 new businesses from the group, target group by 2026, and I believe we're well on the way to that. I have to dig out my piece of paper and I can tell you the number if you want to know. Going forward, I think the key things for us are about building further and deeper partnerships and making sure we've got those partnerships in place. There's also how do we spread the love and be in more locations, and how do we make that work at a basic level? So we're kind of doing that. Interestingly, Aberdeenshire have a project called Enterprising Aberdeenshire, where they have people working in locality based, and it's about having staff working in those locality based areas, and that's noticeably driving up their startup numbers, for example, which is the thing I'm really one of the kind of key measures we get from Scottish Government. So that's the kind of thing that we kind of think about how we make that work in a city base. Also, one of the things that's come out of it is we've got some additional project work that's going on. So we're doing some work with RGU on they have a growth accelerator program. So we've actually worked with them to take the criteria for joining further down and bringing their kind of more skilled, different approach into the areas that we're working. And finally, it fits very closely with our community wealth building approach to what we're trying to do. It's that kind of democratization of, I can't remember what the pillar, the fancy name for the pillar is, but it fits right into the middle of that one. So for me, it's a really an interesting way. The big thing from my point of view is about adopting it into more mainstream activity and going forward. Happy to take any questions. I was only allowed 5 minutes, so hopefully that wasn't more than 5 minutes, Michelle.
You went far too long.
Usually.
No, I just want to add that with Michelle, we went to, and Martin, I think was with us, we went to Tory Skill Center, and it was great not to see only the business pathway there, but we've got pathway as well, who's there as well. We've got the foyer who is there as well. So it's like a mini hub of employment, of health, of support, and mixing health, employment, and businesses, startup businesses, is a very good idea because you really complete each other very well. So we were together in another trip where we saw that startup is important. The rate of failure will always be there in startup, but that shouldn't discourage startup. To the contrary, we should encourage people not to fail, but encourage people to understand that failing is part of the process. So people think too much about employment, just being an employee, they always think about startup. And a great example in the city is what's happening with childminders. Childminders are needed, and it's a kind of small businesses that can grow very well and help the well-being of all the community. So yes, that's I can testify with the people who were with us that worked very well. Any question for Jim? Angela.
Thank you, Jim. I hear you're saying it's going into mainstream business as usual, but in terms of a new target, 100 new businesses by 26. So from a community wealth building, inclusive growth, then I'm assuming that there's more granularity to that target than just 100, because I guess oil and gas industry could create 100 new businesses. If this is about the inclusive growth part of that, then is that target being nuanced within the business as usual?
Sorry, so our annual target for startups is between 350 and 400, depending on the resources we've got available at any time per year. That 100 is the ones that we're targeting people who are on benefits and taking them out of benefits into economic activity. Sorry, I'm too short a slide. So it's very much about that 100 is that area, but by bringing it into it's about bringing more focus and resource onto these and historically we would have called harder to reach groups or underrepresented groups. So by bringing more resource in at a more localized delivery level, you get a higher impact and higher activity. It potentially means that our target numbers will come down, but the quality in terms of our outcomes are much higher, because with due respect to private sector deliverers, they go for the low-hanging fruit, because that's the way, unless you can twist the contracting. So by bringing it in-house, it gives us that opportunity to drive that activity more strongly. Sorry, just one last thing. We didn't win the award, by the way. Dundee won for something else.
Next time, I'm sure. Pete.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on that point about the target, Jim. Did I hear 350 startups?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and is that across all providers in the city? Because I'm just thinking between the two universities, you know, we generate a fair number of student startups, staff startups, and spin-outs in a year. Do they all count in your overall target?
No, that's just the target that we have for the Business Gateway. The number of startups in Aberdeen last year in total was about 800 and something, according to physical stats. Now, I have an issue with the stats because it's registered businesses. So, you know, if you take the business space in Aberdeen, it's about 8,400. But on top of that, there's probably that number again of self-employed people who have not registered, because the figures come from the IDBR, which is the Interdepartmental Business Register. So it's VAT people, inline revenue people have done their inline revenue figures. There's probably nearer 17,000 people doing business. But so it's a large number. But from a Business Gateway point of view, getting 50% of the market's really high, which is really good from our point of view. But it's whether the quality's there. So it doesn't include the guys that you talk about. It doesn't include the startups that SE might be involved in at some point. So it's just about that's just our Business Gateway process. And the Business Gateway works within and I don't like the word, but it works within a kind of an ecosystem to support business and people starting up in business. So it's how we make sure we're within that area.
Thanks very much, Jim. If there is no more question, we'll go straight into the next one, which has won. Who is presenting it?
Thank you, and thank you to the board for inviting me along. As Councillor Allard just mentioned, we were successful for the COSLA Awards in the category supporting vulnerable people in partnership. Sorry, we've gone through. There we go. So like I said, my name is Joanna Sykes. I'm a senior project officer at ABZ Works. I help look after our employability and skills team and the projects associated with that. If you can move on to the next slide. So
I think Joanne's got some fancy animation on her slides, Gogo, so maybe just need to.
There we go. Yeah, so my way to employment started life as a LOIP project to support 30 people caught up in the justice system into employability support and make progress on the employability pipeline. Idea behind it is really to offer that support to people who are particularly vulnerable when they're in prison and have experienced significant challenges in life. And we know that employment is recognised as one of the key tools to break the cycle of offending, make positive changes to people's lives and provide the stability and purpose often lacking and perceived as quite unobtainable for the prison population. So we brought together a number of partners to help support with this project that are listed there on the slide. Really to establish that employability pathway with a particular focus on supporting individuals serving a custodial sentence. We're aware that there were a number of single agency supports offered within the community for those serving non-custodial sentences. So the target was to establish a multi-partner approach and meet the needs of the individuals, particularly those in prison. If you can move on to the next slides, please. So one of the partners we identified was Green King. Sorry, can we just move back? I think if you exit, it might be that timings are on the slide, but we could just pop back. So hospitality firm Green King was recognised as one of the key providers. They were experiencing recruitment challenges and seeking new sources of recruitment. So we identified that by working together, we could help meet their needs by helping to fill some of those positions whilst also offering opportunities to individuals. So we came together ourselves at ABZ Works, Green King and HMP Grampian to identify the need and start building those relationships to achieve the aims of all parties. Using No One Left Behind money from Scottish Government, we provided a training kitchen within the prison, providing tools and equipment which would be used in any sort of hospitality firm. Prison staff then delivered training to enable participants to attain an accredited qualification and taught learners how to work in the kitchen with the promise of work experience and a job upon release. So as you can see on the slides there, it's a 10-week programme with an SQA accredited qualification at the end. That's still ongoing at the moment. Initially, it's quite difficult to break down some of those barriers within the prison, and there was a lot of reluctance to get that support. So there was a lot of investment from HMP Grampian, Green King and ourselves to establish those relationships with individuals to get them onto the training programme. And since then, it's really taken off. There's a lot of support for it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we can see some of the stats there as a result of the intervention plus the additional in-house and commissioned activity within the project. The initial target was exceeded. Initial target was to support 30 individuals, but we supported 63. But I think there is a note on there, 36 people entering into positive destination. I think what's important to note within the project is that because we are supporting people who are particularly vulnerable, we wanted to veer away from the sort of mindset of needing to get into a positive destination. We know that for a lot of these people, just getting onto that training programme actually broke down a massive barrier for them. So it's not necessarily always about kind of the outcomes and numbers. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So the project really allowed ourselves at ABZ Works and HMP Grampian to establish a positive and strong relationship. And there's a lot of further plans laid to support people approaching the end of their sentences into employment. So myself and Leanne Duncan from HMP Grampian will be leading on the new LOIP improvement project to further build on that work and create additional training and employment opportunities to continue supporting those individuals and remove the barriers to employment. So we have already started taking some of those steps. We've provided additional funding resource to expand the Green King Training Academy, as well as expanding the funding to other skill sets and career opportunities, including CSCS card certification and construction courses, which was sort of identified by some of the individuals within prison as something they wanted to engage in. So that's what we'll be looking to deliver. As part of that, we'll also be encouraging uptake of business support funds through our seed fund, which is managed by ourselves at ABZ Works, which I think Jim sort of touched upon a wee bit just on that support, because we know that 9 to 5 isn't always going to be suitable for everyone. We will also be exploring opportunities for paid work experience. And again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the management board for assisting with those conversations and exploring those opportunities. I think that'd be a really, really great opportunity to help establish our conversations with other employers in the city, as well as we look to take that forward. Green King have already shown us that really positive investment of their time and resources and offering employment. And I'm pleased that Aberdeen City Council as an employer will also be looking to take that up as well. And from that, we'll also be continuing that wraparound support within the community for those that have been liberated, as well as those that have received a non-custodial sentence. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, before I take any question, just to say I was delighted to be there at the award event, and Green King and HMP Grampian were there as well, and we were delighted to have won you. You'll have maybe have to wait a little bit to get the award because they kept it just now, but they'll make sure that they bring it back. You know, some point I want to make, because I was HMP prison, and I think Angela went as well to meet some of the guys, and I think it's a fantastic program, a bit like the Rio Living Wage. understanding that private sectors are delighted to get involved in this, and they do understand a bit. Again, Jim Johnson, business startup, failure is not a problem. And now they understand that. They understand that, out of the menu we're going to go through, a lot of them won't have that positive destination or that pathway that is proposed in front of them. But this is not a problem. This is great because it's bring that, open them up to something else, and Green King understand that. I'm really I was really delighted for that win. So maybe I have to wait a bit for the award. Any question? Any comment on this? No, Angela, you went to visit as well.
I did, and like you, am monumentally impressed by Green King as an employer, and came away from that saying, as an employer ourselves, with the range of workforce challenges that we've got as an organisation, and the kind of consistency of employment that we can give. So a number of colleagues supported by Joanna and colleagues are linking in to see in a number of our areas around, can we start to run an equivalent of the Green King hospitality programme, but in some of the skills and the trade areas in particular that we need. Equally, the prison governor just reminded me about not stigmatising and making assumptions. So we need to make sure that we're offering all routes of employment, and not just sort of stereotyping. But we've been well supported by criminal justice colleagues who are going to ensure that, again, as we go on that journey, that we'll be supported. Because as Joanna says, lifestyle is, that there's volatility in the lifestyle as these individuals come back out into community. So we're going to attempt, Councillor Allard as Aberdeen City Council, to try and match the leadership of Green King, and I would be delighted if colleagues within community planning would consider. Our arm's length organisations have been linked in, so APA Sport, Aberdeen Sports Village. We've persuaded all of them to come on the journey too, so they're joining up, because again, the prison has some great workshop facilities, gyms, joinery, horticulture. There's no shortage of training facilities that are there. So as a ACC group, we're certainly going to look to see, with Joanna's support, but if any other community planning partner wants to get a bit more detail, then I'm sure colleagues will be happy to help. Most of the prisoners in Jim Grampian, and colleagues in police will know, are coming back to the city. And back to the earlier discussion, if we don't support that rehabilitation, then the impact that has on families and communities. So it's in our interest to try and guarantee some employment. So there's a lot for us to follow in the leadership of Green King. And I think as public sector partners, we should try and take that challenge. But happy to report back on the progress that hopefully we'll make, but hopefully other community planning partners will want to match that too.
Thanks very much, and the award will come up, Pete.
Thank you. I guess it's an observation. I think, Chair, a few times you've referred in a couple of these agenda items to failure not being a sign of weakness, and I think for anybody that's interested, there is a life skill related to this, and it's called anti-fragility. MIT make a great deal of this, that they say one of the key things you gain from going to MIT is you become an anti-fragile human being. You accept failure as completely normal, and actually something that you develop as a human being, and you become better. And I think that's maybe something collectively that we want to think about, as how do we actually make people more anti-fragile. So there you go. It's something to think about.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Joanne, for this. We'll go to the third one, and Simon. I think Simon is online.
Afternoon, everyone. Lucy Simpson from Aberdeen City Council. Oh, seem to have gone wrong slide. Go.
And we wait, there is a photo as well we can circulate for the award. we had a photo of Green King and everybody else when we received the award. So you can circulate it as well, Michelle.
Thank you. So Lucy Simpson from Aberdeen City Council and Fraser Hogan from Alcohol and Drugs Action couldn't be here this afternoon, but they led on all the work prior to going to the awards with COSLA. Unfortunately, they didn't win, but some good work that they've done. So if we can go to the next slide, Gogo. So this project set out to identify and increase access to treatment for those at risk from drug-related harm, with a focus on harm reduction and engaging with communities and widening referral pathways into harm reduction and treatment services. Next slide, Gogo. So one of the improvements was around a development called Sharp Response, which is a mobile needle exchange and harm reduction service. So basically, ADA staff go out to people in the community, to their houses, and provide clean injecting equipment and harm reduction advice and support, naloxone kits, etc., and take away used paraphernalia. They also issue emergency food parcels and mobile phones, etc. And through other pieces of work, we've also got a direct link to the community nursing outreach project to help people with their physical health and well-being, and links into more structured drug treatment, including prescribing. And in a similar way, there's a crisis response service. So anybody who feels at risk from their substance use or is generally just not coping, or a family member who's not coping, etc., can phone for help and support. Next slide, Gogo. And the other aspect in terms of the project aims was to increase the opportunity to distribute naloxone. So Aberdeen City Council is a corporate distributor of naloxone. 315 staff members within the City Council are now trained to administer naloxone in an emergency or to be able to distribute it. There's a protocol in relation to child protection. So one of the risk factors that we know, particularly, is that children, a number of children have been bereaved because their parents have used substances, and also the circumstances where risk increases when children are taken into care, etc. So there's a protocol now that ensures a bit of safety planning in relation to distributing naloxone at that point, and a number of other partners within the communities, the housing support team, various sort of community centres and libraries, the court team, etc., have all undertaken the training. And just in terms of the outcomes, go the next slide. So there was a 24% increase in the uptake of treatment and support through Sharp Response and the Crisis Response Service, and a 31% increase in distribution of naloxone between 22 and 23. So very few slides. I'm obviously representing other people who have done an awful lot of work, but the infrastructure that goes in to developing this and sustaining it and taking it all forward is not really represented in the slides, but a huge amount of work and a lot of credit to Lucy and all the staff at Alcohol and Drugs Action in particular for taking forward this innovative work. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I think both ADA and Aberdeen City Council were down at the award ceremony and we didn't win. And we waited till the end because there were some special awards at the end. So there were a chance. It's such a fantastic project, but it would have been win. But unfortunately, it was not there. But we were there with Councillor Radley just to make sure that they got all the credit that they needed. And I think we enjoyed the night because speaking to one another in an informal setting was quite interesting, and seeing them, recognizing the difference that they made. If it is a project that is saving lives, it's absolutely this one. And I will not saying well done, Simon, as well, ADP and ADA to work together. And I'm still promoting everywhere the Aberdeen Protects, a new app which is on the Roxone, fantastic. So I don't know if every partner knows about the app, but making sure that if you don't, you get it as well. Any question for Simon? Any comments online or in the room? No. Thanks very much, Simon. Very much appreciated. And we will win next time, I'm sure. I think we were robbed. Absolutely.
Thank you.
If everybody agrees, we are on time a little bit, and as Michelle said, there is a lot of projects in front of us, and there is some of them with Amber and we've read. Unless you've got a particular question you want answered today, I've got a few questions. I was thinking of maybe reading them to Michelle and trying to get the answer from the partners, but I'm happy for anybody to ask any question today if they feel we can do it. I'll transmit mine and I'll put them by email. Any questions online or in the room? No? So can we agree with the recommendations, which are on page 147? Agree? Thank you very much. We'll go straight to 4.1 with the voluntary charter, and this is Michelle again.
Thanks, Councillor Allard. This report is seeking approval from the board to sign up to becoming a volunteer charter champion. Partners have been consulted on this proposal via the CPA management group, following the request that was originally raised by ACVO. Partners have reviewed the principles, and although some partner organisations have indicated that they do not recruit volunteers themselves, or in the case of University of Aberdeen have said that they couldn't fully adopt the principles, all partners are supportive of CPA showing their support by signing up to the charter as a champion. ACVO, the Council, Health and Social Care Partnership, NHS Grampian, Police Scotland and Nestrans have all indicated that they can fully sign up to the principles.
Okay, any comment from anybody? Nope. Happy with the recommendation 175? Agreed. Thank you very much. We go to 4.2, Aberdeen Health Research Determinants Collaboration Progress Report. Again, it's for noting. Martin, but you cannot be here today.
Martin's not here, but we do have Angela, who chairs the HDRC steering group, and we've got Pete Edwards that's on the steering group as well, so I'm not sure if they want to say anything.
Don't ask us anything technical, I think.
Yes.
But we're making good progress, and our evaluation, our self-evaluation against the evaluation by NIHR was interesting. That on a number of areas they rated us higher, which is positive. We're getting lots of benefit in the through NIHR with the links to the other areas in the UK that have got the HDRC2, and of course, as part of our submission to Marmot, we've gone and focused rightly on the progress that we have been making as a partnership through HDRC. I think that's kind of year one down now. There's been lots of understandable governance issues to work through, but there's a real sense now about the upskilling programme that NIHR is going to be able to support the community planning partnership with. And the event that took place recently with a number of good quality speakers around the city's population and the challenges that represents was really kind of high quality event, and was really impactful for discussions. Point that Susan was making, bringing colleagues together to start to explore how we can integrate services. So real value from that. Martin would get me into trouble if I wasn't promoting the HDRC conference the date with which I've forgotten. Is it somebody come to my rescue? Is it 4th? Is it 1st of November? So if you've not signed up for the conference, it's definitely worth. And again, I think is it 4th of November? Correct. That's it. That's it. So so again, we're just looking at what are those things that then can become part of our calendar on a routine basis as well. So no, making good progress, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah, and just to echo, I think what Angela's been saying, I think these things always need a bit of a setup phase. I think it's quite common that things kind of accelerate. I think a couple of points I would make. Both ourselves at the University of Aberdeen and RGU have been working with the HDRC leadership to look at how we expand their connections to academic colleagues within both universities. I think we're very conscious that there was an initial layer of contact, but we're now trying to broaden and deepen that to get more academic colleagues engaging. I think the other thing, and I think it's in today's papers, but I think it should be noted, is I think the newsletter is a really important step forward. I think in actually disseminating what's going on in the HDRC to the wider community, and I think we should recognise that, and I think we should acknowledge the amount of work that's going into producing that.
Yeah, I would absolutely welcome that, particularly when we talk about people, about population, and I've seen on page 183 the paper we were submitted talking about showing low birth rate, low net migration, growing number of people unfit to work, and discussing the potential impact of this. So I think it's important that in the climate that we are, national climate, that we have a voice of explaining things differently, and whatever challenges are very different here. So I'm delighted about that there were a workshop. I don't know what happened at the end of August at the workshop. I didn't participate to it. Maybe you want to give us some feedback on that one?
Yeah, so the morning session was an overview from the census data around the changing nature of the city's population, both in terms of birth rate and in terms of immigration. And again, I think that was useful for all partners to see, again, protected characteristics and levels of inequality. And then the afternoon session, of which Susan and colleagues were a part of, was then looking at the profile of obesity, the prevalence of that, and I guess the consequences of how we will respond to that in a whole system way going forward, because it's it's levels of epidemic in the country now. So I think Councillor Allard, my understanding is there's certainly a write-up of the morning session, and again, colleagues in HDRC have worked on that. At the moment, they're working up the write-up in the afternoon session, and then those respective write-ups are then being considered in a number of partnership structures for then agreeing the next step. Certainly already there's an agreement, and I think this came through a committee of council, about exploring a whole system approach to tackling obesity. So again, colleagues are already starting to look at, with the support of public health, how we can start to map all the current activity that's working towards tackling obesity, with a view to really critically considering whether that's all effective or whether we need to do something different. So happy for the two write-up, Councillor Allard, to be shared with board members. And then I think as we start to build up the discussions we're having on a whole system approach to obesity, I think it'd be really good to bring that back, Susan, into the board as well, so you're cited. I certainly think that the work, Councillor Allard, that's building up around that whole system approach to obesity, I can see that being a really dominant strand in the refresh LOIP. But obviously we want to start to kind of get the system thinking about that. But happy for the write-up to be shared with the board, the management group, and to have an action that we come back to present the initial thinking about whole system approach to obesity. And I should say, within those conversations, we've got all of our sport partners as well. So Sport Aberdeen and the Sports Village, which of course is a partnership with the university as well. So real good insight, and I guess what you can't quantify is just the learning that transferred in that day. an awareness, a real understanding about Aberdeen's population and what's going on in here with all partners hearing that at the same time. That was hugely valuable.
But on both things, on healthy weight, I think it's important that maybe people understand what we have. I think obesity, we get scared of the word or fed up of the word. Talking about healthy weight is a bit different. So I know that we launch a project on that. It'll be good to have some communication on that, people understanding a bit better where we're at, and absolutely on the population challenges that we have in Aberdeen. I think having that kind of communication out there to the media, having a better understanding for the people who have been to understand where we are in the population challenges, I think is very important. Susan, you want to add something?
Yeah, just a couple of points. I think some of the work that's been done through the HDRC on the Health Inequalities dashboard, it's as easy to do it for the whole of the North East as it was for Aberdeen City. And I think that's going to have such a positive impact. There was a presentation through the Public Health System Leadership Group, which brings together all public health specialists and community planning managers, and a huge interest that will support some of the planning work moving forward. And the second area that we're strengthening is around our connects with some of the national work, particularly with Public Health Scotland. They've got access to some data that we don't, because of information governance, but by we're doing a show and tell with them on the 7th of October, which will allow us to enhance further the work that HDRC are doing. So I just wanted to say the ripples that go way beyond Aberdeen City, which is hugely beneficial.
If you got no more question, I invite everybody to be there in November, on Monday, the 4th of November, the Beach Ballroom, Learning Together for Better Lives. I think that will be a date for people to remember. And that was for noting. So happy to invite and wishing Martin Mercer a good recovery. 4.3, UNCRC, which I don't like acronyms, but I will. It's the recommendation on page 2001 and 2002. It was Graham Simpson. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, this is a report that's been pulled together to set out some of the implications for the incorporation of the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child. If I could then say that once and then move to UNCRC thereafter, I would be much grateful. Which was came into effect on the 16th of July, I beg your pardon, having received royal consent in January of this year. And it's got implications for all public bodies to give effect to the 54 articles of the convention to the fullest possible extent. I think what is meant by fullest possible extent is still to be determined, and it's recognised, and the guidance recognises that ultimately it will be for the courts to determine what actually is meant by the fullest possible extent as well. But nonetheless, there is an important need for all the public agencies to begin to think about how their delivery of services takes account of the 54 articles within the convention. Part of that also recognises the importance of the voice of children and young people to actually inform the design and the delivery of services as well. But also, indeed, further goes beyond that to thinking about how children and young people can be involved in a meaningful way in the budget setting processes for public bodies as well. So the paper before you today begins to set out how the Children's Services Board has engaged with partners to assess their readiness for the incorporation of the convention, but also to begin to think about how we might begin to take on board the voice and views of children in determining our priorities and services. So there's a suggestion that we would want to make to the board this afternoon is to establish a shadow board of children and young people to feed into the Children's Services Board. I think we would want to ensure that actually the development of the Children's Services Annual Report and the next iteration of the Children's Services Plan is
much more informed by the voices of our children and young people through workshops, through other participatory activities that we would want to organise as well. But also a further challenge to LOIP projects that actually the voice of children and young people is very much informing and framing the activities and the improvement activities that we're going to take around this as well. So the report sets out 5 recommendations to the board, which I would invite the board to consider this afternoon. Hopefully that is a summary of the paper, but happy to answer any questions on that and the recommendations set out on page 201 for members this afternoon.
Any question or comment? Councillor Blake?
Thank you, and thank you for that. My question was around the shadow board, and I guess we're thinking about the recruitment process for this, because as we found with the Education Committee, was the climate champions, they have tended to end up coming from very similar schools, and I guess I was wondering, how will we look at the recruitment of that, and how do we widen the process so that we don't follow that example? We have talked about that in education, about how we do that with climate, but how will we do it with this?
Thank you, Councillor, for that question, and absolutely agree with you. I think there is a risk of falling into a trap of seeking out the most vocal, and in some respects what the charter actually, the convention rather, sets out is to actually identify those groups who are most disconnected from some of those, particularly children with disability, children living in poverty, children experiencing care, children who are carers themselves, are 4 groups that I would immediately spring to mind, ensure that we've got their voices around that. I think we also can't underestimate the commitment it takes to support a shadow board, and so I think whether we do that, I think there's still a thinking to be done whether we do that on a thematic basis as opposed to asking. We have a bad habit of writing long and lengthy reports and actions. I never heard that, Councillor Ward. But actually, how do we actually engage their voices around that? So I think we would want to think about where are the existing opportunities to engage with those groups, and how do we expand those opportunities and support them to go beyond perhaps what they're remitted to currently do, to do much more of providing voices. So if there's a paper coming up in relation to children with disabilities, I'm aware there is one, so I'm thinking of that just now. How do we engage with that population group for their voices to help us think about the recommendations around that particular paper, as opposed to having a dedicated shadow board as such around it. But I think that thinking is not fully formed, and I would own that acknowledgement.
Councillor Drake.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very enthusiastically supportive of this incorporation of the Act. A question about the proposed board. There's mention in the report of challenges, and I'm wondering how the board would address them, because I was thinking of them more as opportunities. I mean, I appreciate that we want to be able to robustly demonstrate that we are implementing the rights regime as much as possible. There are risks, obviously, but you try to mitigate them as much as possible. And I think that partnership working in advance through this proposed board will help to, as far as possible, predict what the challenges might be. So just wondering if there's any feedback on that. I think that assessing those risks, identifying them would be really helpful.
I think they're one side of the same coin, and I think you're right to highlight that, Councillor Gregg. So I think for me, I think the other bit I would want to sort of say is I think we're actually locally starting from a position of strength. I think we've got quite well developed. Always could be better, always could be stronger, but I think we've got some well-developed engagement opportunities, processes in place that actually ensures the voices of our young people are heard. But I think we need to demonstrate that actually more around that as well. So So I don't think we're starting from a position of weakness. I think we're actually starting from a position of strength. I think we do know and have engaged from the Children's Commissioner some of the areas that they will focus on. I think they will focus on education. They've certainly had a focus on deprivation of liberty, and I think they'll also have a focus on disability as well within some of their areas around that. So again, that provides us with another area where we can begin to get ahead of some of those opportunities and risks around that as well. So I think that we can be fairly dynamic in relation to seeing that and framing this in a positive way, that actually by hearing the voices of children, then we're actually hopefully designing more effective services that actually mitigate the need for future interventions or indeed future harm that sometimes can happen through our collective interventions.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that the strength of that partnership working will help to make sure that we have a very cohesive approach in implementing the rights system. Just as a kind of a follow-up, will the Aberdeen Youth Movement be involved, consulted? They are very, very active, very proactive, and very positive. Or are they being consulted?
So certainly, yes, through that, they are part of the groups. But again, I think picking up on Councillor Blake's point, they're a voice we would want to connect with, but I think they're not the only voice we would want to connect with in terms of thinking about this as well. But certainly, yes, we have certainly ACFO's involvement in supporting those.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, but let's to the question I was going to ask. I think Councillor Blake is totally right. We need to have that communication with different type of youth people, different communities, etc. But regarding the co-design you talk about, because if you look at Article 12, it's about the right of child to be heard and have your opinion considered. But you go further than that by talking about how they can help us design, co-design anything that what we do. People like in that group for Aberdeen Youth Movement can be helpful. That we already asked for their help to try to simplify all our report and moving out the acronyms out or anything else. Having like NHS has an easy, friendly way to start a few paragraphs which encapsulates the rest of the report, which is a lot easier to read. So I would love us as well as Community Planning Aberdeen to be able to do that as well and being able to communicate it a little bit better. I would love to have the views of the Aberdeen Youth Movement of the way we conduct our meetings and the content of our reports.
I think there's a skill in drafting a report that is child friendly and accessible, and I think we just have to develop that skill, and also I think empower our staff and ourselves to write in a different sort of way.
Susan, you?
Yeah, no, I fully supportive of this. I'm secretly smiling as a mum of a teenager who's got completely different language that I have to ask for clarification. So whilst we might have acronyms, I think young people have a language of their own as well. So there'll be some learning in there for us. I guess really supportive of the actions. I think what you've done is carefully highlighted some of the challenges and some of the potential risks around the proposals. I'm just keen maybe to add a recommendation that we capture the learning, because I know we've talked about there is no such thing as failure, and I would agree with that, but I think we are trying something different, so being able to capture the learning and share that with partners I think would be hugely helpful. And I know Tracy Davies, our Child Health Commissioner, is involved with this, so I would hope that we use the outcome of some of this to maybe change and create the conditions within the NHS to ensure that we do hear the voices of young people as well as we could. I think we've got a lot of work to do in this area, so very keen to be an active partner but capture the learning.
take that on board, and I think we can see the rights agenda only expanding to think about how we are engaging with those with learning disabilities and neurodiverse conditions around that in the future. So I think capturing that learning will hopefully inform future.
Thank you, everyone. So have we all looked at the recommendation and we're happy? It's on page 201 and 202, and we're happy with them. Yes, agreed. Thanks very much. Thank you, Graham. 4.4 community learning and development. Page 207 is a recommendation for action, and it's Graham again.
Thank you, Councillor Allard. The report before you today sets out the progress in relation to our community learning and development activity. It has two elements to this. One is summarising some of the learning coming out of a national review of community learning and development, and some of the improvement areas that they have highlighted, which are around 4 key themes: visibility and awareness, the second one, accessibility and availability, the third, support and learning, and the fourth, pathways and progression. So as the report highlights, the Scottish Government's response in relation to that independent review is still awaited, and I think that will certainly go some significant way to informing our continuing planning around CL, community learning and development activity. I almost fell into that trap, Councillor Allard. Of that as well. So I think that's something we want to really have at the forefront of our thinking and our planning going forward. At the same time, there was an HM, Her Majesty's Inspection for Education inspection of our local community learning and development delivery of services, and there was lots of strengths within that, and I think those should be highlighted and celebrated, and I think the workforce who are responsible for the delivery of those should be commended for those. As you would expect, it also highlighted some areas for some learning around that, and one of the key areas it highlighted was, I think, for perhaps a greater visibility to thinking about and strengthening of the governance of community learning and development activity, where we could actually bring that there to a shape around that. And I think the report highlights the ways in which this board can actually support some of that governance and some of that visibility as well going forward. So the proposal, the recommendations set out at the bottom of page 207 really sets out a sense that actually what we want to do is note the current CLD plan for 24-25, but then aim to bring back a further report in about a year's time, which will fully update on progress, but will incorporate the government's response, Scottish Government's response to the independent review, and set out our planning for the 2 years hence beyond that as well. Again, happy to, I hope I've done the report some service and just summarising it, but happy to answer any questions from members.
Thank you. Just to point out, is to approve the interim community learning and development plan. Any question after a very good presentation from Graham again? No? So we're happy to approve and to request that future report like Graham Simpson is telling us about. Yes? Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Graham, for this. We go on 4.5. That's an update on the Housing Scotland Bill. And we've got Mel Booth and Rachel Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. The Housing Bill is a significant piece of legislation, not only for Aberdeen City Council, but also for Community Planning Aberdeen. As the report says, the bill is currently at stage 1 of the parliamentary process, and a lot of the detail on its implementation is not yet available. The Council is generally supportive of the bill, but has some concerns about how the ask and ask duty will operate, and there's concerns around the ask duty creating a surge in demand for our homelessness services. I noticed this week that this lack of clarity is also being picked up by the Social Justice and Social Security Committee, and they've asked the same questions as to what we're asking around the practicalities of the ask and act duty, and would like to understand how this will work in practice. The committee has produced a report which asks the Scottish Government how it will ensure that relevant bodies don't just refer people into the homelessness officers in the local authority. And these are exactly the same questions that we've been asking internally. As the bill progresses through the parliamentary process, one of the recommendations in this report is that an implementation plan will be co-produced with Community Planning Aberdeen, and we will submit a further report on stage 2 to this board. We're very keen to work with our partners on this piece of work. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, it'd be good if our partners wants to get involved in this. I think it's a very important piece of legislation. It will be great to, if you don't have any comments today, if you can relay any comments later on, I think it's important. Anybody wants to make a question, Angela?
Just to say, at the moment, on the face of the bill, so the duty on that Ask and Act falls on Police Scotland, councils. Mel, remind me, there was the expectation it was going to be placed on GPs. That was from the original task force report, but there's some kind of dubiety around whether that's going to get reintroduced back in. But Rachel, in terms of other partners?
So there's also health boards, integration joint boards, and registered social landlords. That's the other key partners around it currently.
And within the Homewards programme, and we're nearly about there, one of the charters in there is around what could we do in advance of to start to explore what Ask and Act could look like in the context of Aberdeen. And we want to make sure that government are sort of cited on that. We could be an early adopter through the Homewards programme. So we're working up the charter on Ask and Act within the Homewards programme. I think it'd be really helpful to have those partners that are named on the face of the bill within that, but also some other partners as well. So for the very reason that we think broadly about what Ask and Act would look like, and you know, that can start from a young person all the way through to somebody in old age that might be at risk of housing insecurity as well. So we'd be keen that we explore that, and I've asked Richard McCallum, Scottish Government location lead, to just facilitate our link into government so they understand and we can all get the benefit of. The Ask and Act duty has been in place in England, and again through Homewards we've reached out to get more insight to how that duty has been discharged in England as well. So Homewards could allow us to get ahead of the curve on the bill, but it'll be important to, I guess, notwithstanding where the law ends up, I mean, it would instinctively be the right thing for a number of partners to be involved at a local level, but I know that actually if it becomes the statutory duty, then we'll all be compelled. But was just keen to really explore within that charter, and we'll adopt the normal discipline that we would. So an offer for partners to come into that project if they'd like.
Yeah, I can agree more, Angela. So Police Scotland wide are looking at what that means for us nationally, but being an early adopter locally where the processes would necessitate that localism, very much up for exploring that. So.
Yeah, and just to confirm, clearly Adam, as our chief exec, is involved in Homewards. So I was having a conversation with him this morning in the light of this paper, saying, have we got everything lined up? So happy to pick that up offline too.
Good. Anybody else want to enter the discussion or volunteer to help? Councillor Cook.
Thanks. Yeah, this may be a daft laddie question. But in terms of the Ask and Act duty, if you put a duty to ask and act on an integration joint board or a health board, people don't interact with integration joint boards. They interact with general practitioners or people in primary care. So have we got any more detail on how that might work? In that it's you're putting a duty on somebody who probably isn't going to be directly in contact with a person.
Good point.
I think that's very well put, Councillor Cook. The devil will be in the detail that will come through as it progresses through the parliamentary stages. But again, you're echoing conversations that we've had internally as well.
Just to say, the national report that there was the precursor to the bill said the duty should apply to GPs, Councillor Cook. So it's quite explicit. And then as the bills come forward, the government has then said it wouldn't apply to GPs. I think that was in the policy document that was attached to the bill. So we're certainly saying, in terms of, because again, I think, and colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, the vast majority of contact for somebody for their first declaration of homelessness is with the health system. So before any other partner, it's with the health system and with the GP. So to not place the duty on there, but I absolutely understand all of the kind of demand that's facing GPs, and it may be, in fairness to government, it's about trying to work through all of that. So that's why we're keen to be a part of that exploration around how do we all join up. And I do think ultimately it comes back to the family support model, because if we're getting the family support model, we shouldn't. The first time that we know of housing insecurity shouldn't be at the homelessness or the eviction stage. So again, it's about that investment in the family support approach for us.
Prevention was the time. Pete, you wanted to volunteer?
No. I'll choose my words very carefully, Chair. No, it was really a daft laddie question that somebody that knows the draft bill probably more than I do, which I know very little about it. Are student residences included or excluded? Are they?
Because they're not currently included.
They're not currently included, right? Okay, thank you. Because if they were, I'm not sure our team would be looking at this. So
I guess maybe just to jump on a bit of an opportunity there, just because they're not included, that doesn't mean that we couldn't explore that more widely. So Angela's point there around GPs, it's crucial that we, despite them not being included in the bill, we still reach out and consider what work we can do there. Student residences within the city, huge population there, some of which do come through Aberdeen City Council services currently. So I think we should be open to explore more widely, rather than just sticking with what's in the bill.
yeah, I think there's an opportunity there to work together under the partnership. So that's something I can take away.
Anybody else? No. So thank you very much for that.
Could I just come back in with another comment?
Yeah, John, of course.
Sorry, yeah. No, in terms of this interaction with GPs, part of me thinks this is a really good thing to do, and part of me thinks GPs are already under massive pressure. Maybe, I'm talking off the top of my head, maybe the thing is to put the duty on the practice rather than the individual GP, in that the ask and act duty could be implemented by the link workers that we've got in general practice. Just a thought.
I guess just to come back, I guess there's a couple of things. There is a national review going on around link workers, so I think the more we can join up agendas would be helpful. But also we're doing quite a bit of work around making every opportunity count and how we include income maximisation in our care pathways, regardless of whether your first encounter is in primary care or in our acute hospitals. And absolutely, I think there's the opportunity to explore housing issues as part of that. And we've currently got some work going on with external bodies to support us to gather data on what is important in terms of tackling child poverty to inform our pathway development. So I think this is an ideal opportunity, and as Angela says, regardless of whether it's in the Act or not, we know housing has a massive impact on our health, and therefore how we can link it into work we're doing already, I think would be hugely beneficial to explore. So happy to pick that up out with.
Plenty of people are happy to pick it up. Simon, I had a comment on Teams. Simon, do you want to share with the rest?
Sorry, I'm not a board member, so I shouldn't really be commenting, but I just thought it would be useful to be able to socialise the thinking around this with staff teams. So if I think about nurses, for example, who work in my service, I think they would struggle to know what they would actually be able to do to act on preventing homelessness. So I think it would be good to have some examples and explore with them, you know, what would be helpful and what would, you know, come into that sort of early intervention or prevention area of work, and then at what point would a referral to homelessness be appropriate?
Thanks very much for that, Simon. A valuable contribution. Don't need to be a board member to make a contribution in this meeting. Angela.
I think that's exactly what will be within the test of change, Simon, within the charter. So we want to attempt to work out how best, and building back on Councillor Cook's point, who are the right people in our system within organisations that are likely to have those touch points, so that making every contact count, and there's no wrong door. So we're just building up the improvement charter with the test of change. I think we've now got the membership of that project team across the number of people that have expressed interest, and I suspect you've just nominated yourself to come into that project charter too. So thank you for everybody's support. You've given us great list of members for that charter.
Yeah, and just to add, Simon, just batting this back, clearly the conversations we've had around liberated method would give an indication of actually that sticky person concept, because often people who are most vulnerable absolutely have housing issues as well. And we know that from the Gateshead work that we've reviewed. So I think we've got some really good examples of how we could do this better in a more joined up way.
Good. So Mel and Rachel, you've got a lot this afternoon, so it's great. We all work together on this. Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone, for your contribution. So we're all happy to agree with the recommendation on 217. And we'll go to the next item, which is, you'll be all happy to know, date of next meeting, 27th of November 2024. Now we've added something on the 27th of November because the event tomorrow is cancelled, and that will be brilliant. Just after we'll win Marmot, and we'll make sure that will be one of the free retain. Is it free? Isn't it? Free people, free. The free places for Marmot. Yeah. So we have to be one of the free. We don't need to win it. Good. And it's Marmot. Yeah, we've got also the 2025 meeting dates, which is right on the top of my page, which I missed. Can you please all have a look of the 2025 meeting dates, just to make sure we don't have repeats of, for example, Nestrans are meeting with us in the same building a few doors away, and some of our board members are on both, and we don't know where to go. So can you please inform Michelle and Gogo in advance if you think there are some big clashes in the meeting, and we might want to amend them if needs to be. Happy with that? And happy with the next meeting. So before I finish, I just want to say farewell to Graham Mackey, who is not here today, but Jason took his place. Graham, of course, has been with us a long time, has been the vice chair for a long time, and we thank him when Susan to come to the place. So I would like to pay tribute to Chief Superintendent Graham Mackey for his leadership during his time, not only as vice chair, but also in Police Scotland. Thank him and all his colleagues for valued contribution, and we hope that that contribution will finish and will keep on. I mean, and we want to wish him all the best in his retirement. I think it will be not short of activities of volunteering. I think a lot of people will knock on his doors when he retires. So I think he's retiring this week, is it?
No, I think 7th of November is his last. So he's around for a couple of weeks if anyone wants to grab a coffee with him. And he's disappointed not to be able to come today, but I'll pass on the best wishes of his council.
Thank you very much, Jason, for this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the people online as well. Bye, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.